Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Weekly Wrap. It's the 17th of April, 2026. I'm Luke Harris, and I'm joined this morning by Mirko and Anthony. Anthony, how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, Luke. Very
Very
good.
well.
Yeah, it's been a short week for me, but yeah, interesting weekend coming up.
Good to hear, mate. Good to hear. And Mirko, what about you, mate? How are you going?
Going swimmingly well.
Going
Fantastic. Always well on a Friday.
Well, that's what I love to hear. That's what I love about you, mate. Always swimmingly well, mate, which is good, which is good. Mate, every week that I prepare for Weekly Wrap, you're preparing, you're putting notes aside, you're going, okay, we'll talk about this, we'll have a bit of a chat about that. And you shake your head on a Thursday night going, God, it's been a crazy week. And this week hasn't disappointed either. It's just crazy has got crazier. But before we get into that, how about a market update?
No worries. Couldn't agree with you more on that front, Luke. I had a discussion with a client yesterday, and it went something to the tune of 10 years ago, had I been saying to you that this is what would be happening in the world today, you probably would have left me as an advisor and said, I think my advisor's taking some illegal substances. But here we are, and
Here
it's
we
all
are.
happening, and there is never a dull moment in the world of markets and the world for that matter. I've had a look at the numbers, and I just sort of thought I'd do a little bit of a deep dive just to sort of see what's going on. It's actually been an extraordinary set of events going on. In the last week alone, so in the last 4 days in the US, if I look at that, we've had the S&P 500 up just over 3%, the Nasdaq up over 5%. Aussie market's a bit of a laggard, only up 0.2, but in the green, so we'll take that. Had a look at if you look back to the 30th of March, which is only 12 trading days ago, the market in the US, the S&P 500 is up 11% over that period of time. So out of the last 12 trading days, it's actually been up 11 times. The Nasdaq is up 16%. It's been up every day for 12 days straight. The All Ords, a little bit slower. We like to sort of balance things up a little bit here in Australia. We don't want to go too hard too soon. 7 of the 11 trading days that we had Easter Monday as an additional day off, have been up, and we're up only 6% during that period of time. And I say only 6% because that's small compared to what's happened globally. So all of a sudden, markets have completely ignored what's going on in the world and said, no, we're actually happy with this current state of play, and away we go. It's been pretty sort of phenomenal, and in fact, the US overnight had hit all-time highs in the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, and Australia's not too far off. I think we're about 50 points off the All Ords of being at all-time highs as well. So if you thought you had this figured out, yeah, you probably haven't. I'll be honest.
But Mick, tell me about, because I can see the US continuing to rally and positive and hit all-time highs, and Australia lagging so far behind. But when it turns the other way, we pretty much run speed for speed with the US when we're in a downturn. Why do you think that we're lagging that far behind?
Yeah, look, I think in Australia, our growth has actually been slower, like in terms of the economic growth itself. I think we've been a little bit slower. I think the Australian psyche is more along the way of sort of caution and the like, and we've been in a position where, our rates are going the other way to the US. So I think one of the things that's happening with particularly US markets is that they feel that they can hang their hats on a couple of more rate cuts over there, whereas we're the complete opposite here. And interest rates going up make people nervous in Australia, and would do the same in the US. I think we have a government in the US that does hang its hat on market performance as well. There's midterm elections coming up in November, so always backing that self-interest scenario. So I think they'll do everything they can from the messaging point of view, from rates and the like, to sort of try and ensure that markets stay buoyant over there.
Anthony, just to follow up on that, I reckon there's probably 3 things in the United States where they differ significantly to Australia. I think the American psyche has a lot to do with things. So I think the American psyche is that they've banked the fact that this war will be over sooner rather than later. They bank the fact that the US will win, and they bank the fact that the US will come out better as a result of it. And that's just a fundamental belief that Americans have. I think Australians are more cynical. I think we're very good at BS detecting, and we call it a lot quicker than most, which probably explains why a lot of people like Australians around the world, because we're pretty cut and dry with the way we think about things. I think the other thing that also happens in the United States, and what's also happening globally as well, there is a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines. And the problem is people just don't know what to do with that cash, and they're going, well, where do I deploy it? And so it's money that has to go into the market. Problem is you're buying things that are already overvalued or without substance in many respects. So the challenge, and this is the hard bit for investors from that point of view, the challenge, particularly at the passive level. So when you're buying those passive instruments, the risk is you're buying more and more of these really expensive things without the backing or the credentials behind them or the economic data which supports their current valuations. So there is an argument where you kind of go, well, is now the time to be passive, or should we be looking at a more active approach or adopting that? And I think the final thing in the United States, which is probably the biggest thing, is the tech stocks, as in the big magnificent sevens and all that kind of stuff, your Nvidias, your Amazons, your Googles, your Facebooks, your Microsofts, and so on. They're distorting the whole picture. So, you've got, going back on what Mirko just said, Mirko, I think you said 16% in the last 12 days, the NASDAQ?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there you go. We in Australia don't have anything comparable or within QE of that sort of stuff. So we are always going to be a laggard in that space. So I think that's probably why. In saying that, when the US comes off, why on earth we replicate it and follow it in sync defies logic. And if anything, we're probably worse. So that's probably the annoying bit. Why is that, Mirko?
I'm going to challenge your theory about we've got nothing that comes close to 16%. We can do 16% in a day. Have a look at the Shell down the road from our office here. I've seen them move like that in an hour.
That's a fair point. Hey, gentlemen, in breaking news, and Mirko, thanks for the update on markets, but in breaking news, this morning or overnight, we've heard that Israel and Lebanon have agreed to a 10-day ceasefire, which is fantastic. And, we want a world that is peaceful. We want a world that isn't at war and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that two countries have come together is great. Problem, however, Lebanon doesn't want to fight Israel and never did want to fight. Israel's been fighting Hezbollah, and they're not a party to this deal. So are we window dressing a pig?
I could go so many places with that question, Luke. I do not believe one iota when I hear the word ceasefire anymore, because I actually saw what happened over the last 2 weeks, particularly. And ceasefires mean nothing when civilians are being killed. I'm not going to buy into that, because I know that I'm one web page away from seeing that someone's launched some sort of attack in that region.
Look, it is. There is very much a moment in time where you're just kind of going, you can't make this shit up. Surely we're at that point. It just seems to be just absolute craziness. Now, I guess from that point of view, and that probably brings us to the Trump administration. It's been an interesting week, on top of the interesting weeks that we've had prior to. But this week's been pretty fun in the sense that, if you remember, over Easter, Trump had promised death and destruction and sending him back to the Stone Ages. So that's where we were. And I think he quickly realized that probably wasn't going to yield the result, and probably brought into question his ability to claim the Nobel Peace Prize. You kind of can't win that when you're blowing people up. That's just the view, I would have thought. So he's taken a different tack, and he's taken on economic strangulation. So what we're going to do is, instead of Iran now blocking the strait, hold my beer, the Americans are now blocking the strait. Good idea or bad idea, do you think?
Actually, Donald Trump has had a go at us overnight too. He's had a go at Australia's lack of support in helping block the Strait of Hormuz, which I'm fascinated by. Donald, if you're listening, if you're your business guys and your analysts are listening, Have a look at how much we pay our lollipop people to control traffic, mate. You don't want Aussies running the Strait of Hormuz, mate. Your budgets are going to get blown out sideways. Trust me, it's not going to happen for you. I can assure you.
Oh, that is gold. That is gold. Look, to his credit, this change in tact from blowing people up and killing people and all that kind of stuff, thankfully that didn't occur, to economic strangulation actually makes sense. If you actually stop Iran from making money through oil sales, so Iran was still negotiating oil sales to other countries or friendly countries, as you so call it. If you stop them from doing it, they don't get money. And by not getting money, they can't support their war efforts. They can't support the IRCG or whatever it might be, the Iranian army from that point of view. So it is causing them massive issues. So I actually think this is the approach I should have taken from day one, by definition. In saying that, I want to reflect for a second, Anthony, probably a question for you. Before this whole episode started, so 27th of February, we've got freedom of passage. Inflation is not under control, but it's okay. Petrol prices were normal. The world was a safer place. And 20 days later, 40 days later, where am I going? 40 days later, we're the complete opposite. We're now paying tolls. We've now got absolute chaos at the Bowser. Costs have gone through the roof. The world is insecure. He thinks that Trump may have got this one wrong. What do you reckon?
I think that the more important thing is how many days has he got left until he's out of power. That's probably the key thing to start thinking about, because it is a world of uncertainty at the moment. And as much as he's trying to impact Iran, but what other countries are being impacted? Like from our government in terms of our fuel shortage and what that looks like, and the concerns and the cost of living and inflation here. It's having an impact across the world. Now,
absolutely,
he's wondering why various countries are not trying to align to him or not aligning to him and supporting him. Well, he's having a considerable impact on a number of economies by his actions. So, to me, it's all about, and everything he's tended to do since he's been in government this time round has all been about power and grabbing land or grabbing resources or things that are going to improve America, but potentially impacting the rest of the world. So, it's a concern, but I think you're right. No one wants to see death and destruction, so it's a different attack, which may prove successful, but time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, when we all know in life, you've got your mates and you've got your good friends, and in geopolitical terms, it's called allies. And America's had those, and when you piss people off to the levels that you do, and then you badmouth them and you talk them down and you tell them how useless they are, eventually they do put up their fingers and go, screw you. And I think Donald Trump is fighting that. And I think the challenge for Donald Trump is, the art of a deal. If you ever want to read a book of entertainment, read that. It's like a bowl of Cocoa Pops. There is just a lot of snap, crackle, and pop. There's nothing really exciting about it. And to be honest with you, with bluster, yes, negotiations work, and don't get me wrong, but negotiations need to be civil. They need to be respectful, and they need to be understanding of all parties. This whole notion of we win at the expense of everybody else. Yeah, you can see why the world has done what it's done. Now, one thing, and I was bemused this week. Donald Trump made a decision. I don't know what it is with him on Sunday nights, for God's sake, but he made a decision to attack the Pope. So just from a perspective here, from that point of view, there's 1.4 billion Catholics globally, and they're not all practicing, but there's 1.4 billion Catholics globally. There's 70 million in the United States. And his attack on the Pope was he's weak on crime. I didn't know the church was supposed to manage crime. I thought it did other things. Is this evidence that the bloke's losing his mind and he's actually unhinged? I would think yes, but interested in your thoughts, boys.
No, bring back Joe Biden. He made a bit more sense at times.
He set the benchmark on sense, you reckon? Yeah, quite extraordinary that what he's done there, to go the religion route.
Bizarre.
Had he done the same thing with maybe another religion, how would that have panned out? I just can't believe he's even going there. Like,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. Look, it is like you wake up in the morning and I remember looking at it going, no, you're kidding, right? This he hasn't gone there. And it just, I think the thing that really frustrates me in all this thing is, we have this saying in the office here, the standards you walk past is the standards you accept. And, and I know the standards that we uphold and we sit back and we're always pushing the standards in terms of they've got to be higher and they've got to be better and all that kind of stuff. And from a global perspective and just watching Trump's behavior in terms of the way he interacts with the world and what he's doing, we seem to be going the other way with him. And you just sit there and think, well, okay, he's an old senile bloke. He'll be out in a couple of years. No dramas, no damage done. But the reality is there's people watching him. There's people who actually like what he's doing. And you're kind of going, I think that's perfectly normal. We're just resetting the bar of stupidity, for God's sake. It feels nuts at the moment. That's
Did you see his response? He actually said that no, that was supposed to be me as a doctor. Now I don't know what's more far fetched, him as a doctor. I can just see him doing 7 years of med school. Yeah, right.
One thing I will say, and I did, like, it was an AI picture, so I will say that, but there was a touch of Jeffrey Epstein in the picture. Did you notice that? So I didn't want to say anything, but I looked at that and thought, oh, you would have changed the facial features of the person you were trying to heal as a doctor or as Jesus or whatever you were, for God's sake. That's a separate issue. Now, let's go to the domestic front. On the domestic side, the banks here in Australia are at it again. Okay, so this is an interesting one. So we know that the Reserve Bank has been increasing interest rates. That's all been going on. The poor mortgage owners are copping it sideways. So that's what happens from that end. But what usually happens is when you increase interest rates on the mortgage side, what should flow on is that should also happen on the savings side. Now, our banks, kudos to these boys, and that probably explains why their profits are so inflated. Our banks have been very good at passing on the bonus interest rate provided during one of those bonus accounts, but at the base accounts, they haven't had any movements whatsoever. So to give you an idea here, between 2022 and now, bonus rates have risen by as much as 4% in that time. Base rates have only risen by 0.4% in that time. So this is showing you how the bank's doing it from that point of view. So there's a massive disconnect from that point where clients might be thinking or depositors in banks might be thinking I'm doing okay when you're actually not. Now, I guess the question that I'm asking both of you, maybe to you, Anthony, first, why would the banks be doing this, you reckon? Captain Obvious?
I think you said it in your first line in terms of it has a number of shareholders to look after, and effectively profits are key for those in charge. So, and look, as the challenge is, and it's like moving from any, I won't call it trusted advisors because that's probably a loose term when you're talking about the banks, but it's not easy to change. So effectively, those that are have savings effectively just continue to roll and leave it where it is and go with the status quo. So you're right. If you're not looking at it, not looking and reviewing it, then effectively you're getting hit.
Absolutely. And I know Merck and I've been working, we work across a number of clients. One of the things we're encouraging them to do is be frugal, check your private health insurance, check your home insurance, check your banking arrangements. Because the reality is, CPG here, CPG there, CPG there, it may not be a lot at one spot, but when you start to add these things up, all of a sudden it becomes a sizable amount. And in the cost of living crisis, these things do matter. So I think, when we were looking at this sort of stuff and when the data came through, you were looking at the banks and just shaking your head and think your gall knows, there's just no limit to how far you'll push this thing. And it is it's banked on the fact that they're hoping that clients won't move. And we know that in 80% of circumstances, that's pretty much the rule of thumb. So you get the 20% that move, but the 80% that don't. So it's an interesting one. Now,
I think on that front, the banks basically work on our apathy. Yeah, so the apathy from the customer to say I couldn't be bothered with this, it's all a little bit too hard, that weighs in for the banks. There is a loyalty tax. Unfortunately, it only goes one way. That loyalty tax stays with the institution if you don't keep them honest. So do pay attention to that, because there's a hell of a big difference between earning 0.5% and 5%, which is achievable these days. So do ask the question, and for our clients, if you are renewing term deposits and things like that, feel free to tap us and sort of say, hey, what are you seeing in rates? What should I be getting? At least you've got something to go and pitch to the teller.
Yeah. And the other thing there too, to our clients, just to remind them as well, with those bonus rates things, you can get those accounts where those rates are paid to you automatically without you having to jump 55 hurdles to achieve it. So, you're having to top up and have an account where you got more money in it, you can't take any money out of it. It's just like, well, hang on a sec, that's economic coercion, for God's sake. That's your cash. So this whole rubbish thing. So there are accounts out there where you can earn a very good at-call rate, of 5% plus, 4.75% plus, for monies that are on call free from restriction. So don't just be hoodwinked by what the banks are saying to you, saying, oh, you can only access it on one day a month between the hours of 3:30 in the morning and 4. It's for God's sake.
It must be so much fun being a retiree and spending. I'm busy trying to land my bonus rate this month. Like, seriously.
It is nuts. All right, gentlemen, I'm mindful of time, but one more topic that I wouldn't mind exploring this week. Angus Taylor met with the National Press Club and launched the migration policy for the coalition. And in fairness, it was one of those policies where you sat back, and the way the reporting has come back with saying, well, hang on, that's a big lurch to the right, with Angus Taylor saying, well, we want to be very selective about who comes into the country. We want to be very sure that they're committed to Australia and all those sorts of things, these are all wonderful statements. I guess the question that I would always ask is, how do you test this stuff? But probably the biggest issue is here, it seems to be going down the route of what Pauline Hanson and her party, as in One Nation, are promoting. Now, yesterday we saw Paul Keating come out and absolutely lambast the coalition and calling them out for being racist and so on. Is this a race issue, or is this more an economic issue? And I don't want to get into the concept of whether or not immigration is good or bad. We'll leave that for a separate time. But I guess thinking about where we are today, thinking about the stretch on resources, thinking about how it just feels like it's really hard to do things from that point of view, does Angus Taylor and the Liberal Party have a point in relation to saying, well, capacity-wise, we just can't afford to have this flow of people coming in at this particular moment in time?
Surely this is part of a broader picture that needs to be discussed. This is not simply about, bums on seats, if you like, arriving in Australia. This is actually about our infrastructure, about what we're doing over the next 10, 20, 30 years to secure the next generations, and we're not having those discussions. And one thing I've certainly noticed is that we're really poor at actually building infrastructure. We don't seem to be able to do that very well. So if you can't do that well, how on earth are you going to try and stimulate the economy by growing your population? So a lot to be discussed here, and I wish that both parties of politics, when they do present these things, it should not just be a policy on immigration. It should actually be a policy on Australia as a whole, and say, this is what we're thinking. This is what our mud map looks like. We never hear that stuff.
Yeah, here. Anth, do you have a view, mate?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Keating's rebuttal to what was said was more around, well, we need it, but you got to get all the other things right first in terms of infrastructure and spending and policy, etc. So, and that's the issue, is that I think we've been not operating at the level we should be as a country, probably through poor government, and effectively that's now having impact on issues like migration, and effectively that's being targeted as a cause, when I think there's other things that could have been done to effectively not make it so much of an issue. So it's clearly, and we've spoken at length over many weeks, and you guys probably for years, around poor government, and effectively that we're not building a better Australia.
Absolutely. And I think the other problem that we're also not considering here is that we actually need the migration to do the jobs that we don't want to do. So, like if we think about the aged care, if we think about, the areas of service economy in terms of where the bulk of that stuff is, Australians typically, as we're aging as a population and so on, they're not doing those roles. They don't want to do those roles. Yet we need people to sit in those roles. So you've got to be very careful about what you do here, yeah? Because the reality is it's not just about housing. It's not just about infrastructure. It's also about, well, hang on a sec, how do we actually service this economy? It's also about the tax pool too, Anthony. You're across the data here. Ultimately, we need taxpayers to pay tax. And we need income producers to do that. Now, the reality there is if we stop that, you've got that. Now, I can understand the Liberal Party's view of saying, well, let's get the biggest and brightest stars to come to the country. But unless you've got the incentives of innovation and all those sorts of things that Mirko's been banging on about these, the pre-venture capital and all that kind of stuff, those incentives in the system, why would you come to Australia for?
Why would I be a startup in Australia? Eastern European bloc countries have got startups which are outrageously good and some of the smartest stuff coming out in the world out there. Australia would be far down the ladder as a place to come and start a seed sort of venture type scenario.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Gentlemen, fascinating conversation. Been a lot of fun. Enjoyed that. Now, one thing I will say, did anyone watch the football last night?
Don't go there, like he's gonna.
You know what? I love Carlton and I love nothing more when they lose. But yesterday I was actually genuinely hoping so. I thought Collingwood, Carlton, imagine a draw. We don't like either side, so that would have been fantastic. That poor young kid, 30 seconds or, at the final siren, taking a goal or kicking for goal from that point of view, just misses to the left. And the look of devastation on his face it was heartbreaking last night to see that one.
The only thing I can take out of that, and I do feel for that the young lad Taylor, I was so impressed by the way that his teammates actually rallied around him, and and despite the fact of how little games they've actually won, I think that gives your team a glimmer of hope when you see your teammates rally around you. But stop pot shotting him, Lukey.
Yeah, no, I won't pot shot because I'm feeling for Taylor, and I'm holding back. I'm holding back, despite the fact that I was punching the air last night. In saying that, you are absolutely on point, Mirko. When I saw Carlton and the players rally around him, and the way they did that, and even to Collingwood's credit, even the Collingwood players, walking up to him and all that kind of stuff, it's one of those things. I imagine as a young kid, and we've all dreamed and we all thought we might be footy stars, and none of us are, I've noticed on the screen here, but we'll just leave that alone. But when we were all dreaming in the backyard, we all had that vision of, after the siren, we're taking a kick and we're going to win the game or we're going to draw a game, whatever it might be. So that poor kid, I imagine, would have had this dream 20 times over. And it didn't eventuate. But on brighter news, did we see the Bombers last week? And let me tell you, gentlemen, September plans cancelled. We're here, mate. We're going to be big time, I reckon.
He's going to be unbearable, Anthony.
Build it up because, he'll come down with a massive thud very soon. Can't wait for Carlton to play Essendon.
Ye of little faith. Of little faith. Let me tell you. All right, gentlemen, it's been a lot of fun. Before we do head off, one massive announcement. This week we had a lovely, lovely lady join us by the name of Lisa Haley. Lisa Haley has joined our organisation, which is a massive coup for us. Lisa brings with her 20 years plus of advisory experience. She is a capable, diligent, and exceptional human being who her level of care and want to help clients knows no bounds. So to all our clients out there, please be sure to reach out, say hello to Lisa. You'll be most impressed about who she is. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll organise a time where we'll get to meet Lisa online. And then as you're coming through and popping into the office from that point of view, make sure you give her a wave. To the rest of our team out here at Innate Wealth, thank you as always for all your wonderful work. And to all our wonderful clients out there, thank you as always for checking in. Thank you for always for making it entertaining and making us smile. We love to serve and we love hanging around with you guys because it's always a lot of fun. Until next week, all the very best. Take care. Chat soon.
See you guys.
Cheers.